Hi, so today I wanted to go over a question that came to me from one of our new agents, and I sometimes take for granted that what I do is just like second nature, but just ask me, what is the proper way to show properties? And I've been doing this for so long, I hadn't really thought about it, so I really thanked her for her question. So I have 9 tips as to what I think is important when you are showing properties to buyers. And number one is research the properties. So many properties come on the market and go off the market that if you set the showings too far out in advance, you may have properties that are already under contract, or you may have properties that came back on the market that were under contract, or something new that came up. So you want to make sure you research the properties even the day of the showing and make sure that everything is in order, or you can add if there's some new things that have popped up, or subtract if something did go under contract. Number two is know your routes. I've been selling real estate for over 30 years, and we used to have to map it out on maps. Well, now everybody has GPS, but I'm sure you guys have all had experiences with GPS taking you in really weird ways to get to properties. And if a buyer really knows the area well and you don't, and the GPS takes you in a really strange way, they're going to know it and maybe lose some confidence that you know the area pretty well. So really, if you don't drive it the day before, or know the routes, at least look at it on a map so that you kind of know what the routes are going to be, so that the buyer doesn't lose confidence in you. Number three, have the buyer packet information ready. And so what I mean by that is, if it's a first time showing and you haven't been able to have a consultation with them like we recommend doing up front, make sure that you have a buyer packet ready for them, including a consumer guide to agency relationship. I think everybody knows, but very few people do present that on the very first showing. And I know that because sometimes when I show properties and I ask them to sign it, and I say something like, I'm sure that this isn't, how many properties have you seen already? And they'll say 4 or 5. I say, well, I'm sure this form isn't new to you, because it's part of our state requirement that we have to disclose our agency relationships and have you, sign that I've at least gone over that. It doesn't obligate you to me to purchase a home, but I'm just fulfilling my state obligation. And I would say maybe 1 in 10 have actually seen that form before. So make sure you have your consumer guide to agency relationship, and make sure that you have them sign it. And if they refuse to sign, just put a file, copy in or file of that. And then also in the buyer information packet, make sure that you've got copies in order of everything that you guys are seeing that day. And I always put the time frame on there too, because it kind of leads to one of my next points. But I put the time frame of when we're going to be showing the properties, and that way the buyer has the time frame, and then can make their own notes on it as they're going through the properties. My next point number 4 is, when you actually enter into a property, you're going to ring the doorbell, knock on the door, and use the lockbox to come in, but still make your presence known. Sometimes people are still there, and it's awkward for you and the buyer and the occupant of the property if they didn't know you were there. So make sure that you say, yell out, just, hey, I'm here with Remax, or ABC Real Estate Company, just to make sure your presence is known. Next, number 5, make sure that you're prepared with all of your real estate equipment. So it's really embarrassing if you don't have your app updated with the most recent app for the electronic lock boxes for Dayton and Cincinnati, or if you don't have your car gassed up, or whatever the case is, or your cell phone charged. Make sure that you have all your real estate equipment that you're going to need that day up to speed, charged, and you're ready to go. And when you're in the property, you're going to want to put on a consulting hat. Like, it's not your place to be a salesperson. Nobody likes to be sold anything, right? So when you're going through the homes, what you're going to want to do is say something to the effect of like, hey, we're here to take a look at this property. It's your job to try the house on for size. See if you like the way it feels, if you like the layout, if you like the location, if you like the amenities. It's my job as your real estate professional to kind of look for the not so great things, the not so sexy things in the house. Like, I'm going to be looking out for any potential issues that I see. If I see some water in a ceiling, I might recommend that if that's the house you choose, that we might have that inspected. Or, if I see some drywall cracking in a corner, or if I see, anything that I think might be a potential issue for you, I'm going to point those items out, and we're just going to make a note of them, just so that we can further inspect those if that property is the one that you decide. a lot of times often that they're going to ask you your opinion of things. And this is a really tricky one, you guys, because 9 times out of 10, they really don't want your opinion. They want you to verify their opinion, right? So it's really important, and it's kind of it's a talent that you'll have to develop over time, that you learn to ask more questions. We literally have had buyers fire us over the past because we actually gave them our opinion. One of my agents gave an opinion about 5 acres and mowing the 5 acres and how long it would take. Well, it was totally contradictory to what the buyer wanted, and the buyer literally went and worked with somebody else because they didn't think that he understood the value of the 5 acres. He may live in a downtown high-rise, but a buyer that's looking on 5 acres is going to understand that unless they hire somebody, they're going to be spending several hours in the yard mowing the grass. So it's really important that you ask more questions and really get to the point of what they're trying to ask instead of just giving them your opinion. I promise you, over the years, I've shown and sold many houses that I wouldn't live in, but whoever buys them absolutely loves them. So just remember that they're asking for your opinion, but be careful with how you share that opinion because they're really looking for validation of what they want. Next is your job to kind of guide them through the process and to keep them moving. It's okay to say, one of the things about it is, I don't live in this home, and we have a schedule today. We're looking at several properties, and I want to make sure that I keep us on time. So if we walk into a property and Mr. or Mrs. Buyer, that this property just isn't for you, or you really don't like whatever, it doesn't feel right, it doesn't look right, I am not offended if you want to just keep moving on. And then if you do have that buyer that whether they like the house or not, they tend to look at every little nook and cranny, one, you're going to know that those are typically analyticals because they're looking at all the details and they're looking at, all of that. Or they could be an expressive. They just like to look at pretty properties. But it's really important that you keep them moving along out of respect to them and the next sellers that you have that you're showing the properties to. So it's your job to keep, guide them and then keep them moving forward, right? Number 8, this is super, super important, leave everything as you found it. If the lights were off when you got there, make sure that the lights are off when you leave. If the lights are all on when you get there, then leave them on unless the showing instructions say something different. If the showing instructions say turn off all lights when you leave, well, turn off all lights when you leave. One of the things about it is if the lights are all on and you turn them off, there could be other showings after you and you may not know that. So just leave the property as you find it. Super, super important. And make sure that you check all the doors that are there, that they're locked. Occasionally a client will go off on their own and if there's multiple people, like one could be with you and the other one might go off and open some doors that you're not aware of. Just double check out of respect and courtesy to the owner of the property that you make sure that all the doors are locked. It's extremely unprofessional to be lazy and to not make sure that the doors are locked or that you keep the house in its present condition as you found it, or per the instructions for the showing instructions. And number 9, after you finish your days of activity, it's an emotional process for buyers. They went through a lot of homes. Sometimes if you show them more than 5, which I don't recommend showing more than 5 or 7 in one day, unless you're working with an out-of-state client that really is trying to learn the area plus the properties, then you just recap. While you're at the properties, remind them of what they wanted that you went over in their buyer consultation. This house has 4 bedrooms. It has the updated kitchen. It has the finished basement, that they were looking for. So tell me, is this the kind of finishes that you like? Or, if this one, they say they like a property, but it doesn't have the 2-car garage, just ask more questions about that. So at the end of if you're looking at properties, review the activities of the day, review the properties, and follow up with them. See what they're thinking, get whatever questions that they have, that they had come up through those showings, get those questions answered quickly and get back to them. In this day and age with email and text messaging, it's really not hard to get the questions to your answers in a timely fashion and get them back to the buyers. And then also make sure that your buyers know that even in a down market, properties that are priced the best for their amenities, their location, their condition, all that kind of stuff, they're still going to sell, and they're still going to sell quickly. And even in a really bad market, you can still get multiple offers. So always let your buyer know, based upon your, your professional opinion, that, it's really not time to delay if you want to make an offer, because you don't want to miss the best house that you find. And 9 times out of 10, the buyer will find the house within the first 5 to 7 showings if you're doing your job and asking them the questions of what they really want to have in their home, the must-haves, and then the would-like-to-haves. You know what I mean? So if a house checks off all their boxes, help them make the decision to make the decision quickly. So I hope you enjoyed those 9 steps on showing properties. And if you ever have any questions, feel free to reach out to us on our Dayton Northern Cincinnati Real Estate Mastermind page. We'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. All right, I appreciate you watching, and thanks.